Hello, my friends, and welcome to today's show. Thank you very much for joining me. I have just wrapped up the Hangout, which went for about 3 hours, a Zoom Hangout with 40 to 50 subscribers to the stand-up community, the show, supporters, and it was awesome. It's always awesome. So many laughs. We came up with all kinds of really funny ideas for shows based on people's lives, including our friend Karen Madison. We're gonna try to pilot a show with Karen because she's single and dating, and it's called I Hate It Here. And we pissed laughing at the ideas about it, and Karen was a superstar as always. So you're missing out if you're not at those hangouts. If you're a paid subscriber, you really should just turn the computer on. You don't have to say anything. If you're not, you should sign up. StandUpWithPete.com, Patreon.com/Pete Dominic. So much fun, and I'm a little tipsy, I'm not going to lie to you. So let me get to the show, if you will. Awesome show for you today, of course. It's Friday, so I check in with Ophira Eisenberg and Christian Finnegan. Oh, Finnegan. And we've got the great Aaron Carroll joining us, who is just, frankly, the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And he is the chief medical officer at Indiana University, where he's in charge of mitigation to this and every other virus and health issue at Indiana University. He, of course, is a contributor to the New York Times. He is a pediatrician, and he has his own YouTube channel. It's Healthcare Triage on YouTube. Go support it. Sign up to support him on Patreon. He is an amazing guy and an amazing friend and a personal friend of mine, of course. Love him. He's on Twitter at Aaron E. Carroll. And we had a great conversation. Used some of the questions that you submitted to me before. Ladies and gentlemen, the first guest on today's show. Let's get to it. That's what you're here for. Dr. Aaron Carroll joins me now, and here's a great jingle by Gareth Sever.
Paging Dr. Carroll. Paging Dr. Carroll.
Aaron Carroll.
He's Karen, and he shares it all.
Aaron Carroll.
He's blaring it out and bears it all.
He knows modern medicine, dispels disinformation. He's a brilliant pediatrician. All that and then some. Aaron Carroll. He's the IUCHO. Does HSR, writes NYTO, and puts out HC
Paging Dr. Carroll. Dr. Carroll to the studio.
Hilarious.
So many great layers. Gareth Sever, Pete Coe. Well
Phenomenal.
done, gentlemen.
Phenomenal.
Even your primary place of employment doesn't have an intro theme song.
No, they don't.
I say that when you enter the building, that song should play.
Yeah, it'd be great, but it doesn't. They don't do that for me.
That is really, they don't care about you as much as we do here.
Clearly not.
The stand-up community. Great to
Clearly
see
not.
you. Thank you
And
for
you.
joining me. And
Sure.
there's a lot to discuss, apparently.
Yeah.
And I just want to say we appreciate your time so much. Everybody knows you and I are close friends, but you are also the chief health officer, forgive me, at IU. And Indiana, like the rest of the country, is filled with COVID. And
Oh, God, yeah. On fire.
right now, they are about to come back. Students about to come back at IU and many universities across the country. So a lot to get to.
Yeah.
Could you just can we start with like maybe some forecasting based on what I've heard with epidemiologists, based on what I've heard with, experts on treatment? We've got the antiviral pills. We've got several new treatments. We've got new vaccines being put out hopefully soon. We've also got these variants, but they seem to be less damaging to some extent in some ways. And I hear a lot of experts saying like 4 to 8 weeks or something. And then maybe we're out of this not for good. It'll always be here, but this kind of upheaval in our lives.
Well, there's a massive Omicron surge going on right now in most places, and that is likely going to peak in the next few weeks because it is super fast. And then it'll turn around and it'll come down. Like it won't be over when the peak is over, but then it'll go up and it'll come down. And so it's possible that by end of January, we'll have crested, in which case we'll be coming down in February. And then we'll see how long we can get a break until, something else happens. I think the biggest thing is that we're just living in two different worlds here. The vaccinated and the unvaccinated experience these surges very differently. Hospitals are massively full right now, mostly with unvaccinated people with COVID, because that's who mostly gets hospitalized. So Omicron's different in that a lot of people are getting infected and sick, even if they are vaccinated, some even if they're boosted, but they don't tend to get very sick. But, unfortunately, lots of people are getting COVID. And when you have huge numbers, even rare outcomes happen more frequently, especially amongst the unvaccinated. So it's still a massive problem for the healthcare system, which bleeds over into everybody. So when people are like, well, I'm protected, why do I care? You have a heart attack and there are no beds at the hospital. That's bad, even if you don't have COVID. And that's unfortunately, again, occurring in many, many places across the country. So the next few weeks are going to be rough. They're going to be rough all over, but hopefully we'll get through this one. And I keep hoping we learn lessons and do the right before the next one, but we'll see.
What do you say to someone who argues, since it's less severe, especially if you've got your booster, you're not that sick, you should still go to work so that the school functions or the company functions or whatever. You're not that sick. You should go to work.
Well, okay, if you're asking me, like, if you're actively sick, then no, because you're infectious and you can give it to other people, some of whom may, live with people who are at higher risk or maybe at higher risk themselves. So I don't think anyone, I hope very few people are pushing for actively infectious people to go.
Well, the reason I say it is because on my community Facebook page, the argument is specifically about schools. And yes, some people are saying, a lot of these teachers who are calling out sick aren't that sick. They can go to school and they can't is what.
Well, it means it depends what you mean by not that sick. If we mean that, like, they appear to be pretty well, but are still infectious, that's a problem. If they mean not that sick and that, they're lying and they're not sick, that's a completely, of course, different story. But I imagine it's more the former. And even though this is mild, if it could be COVID, if people could be infectious until they have test results back, or if they do have COVID until they're no longer infectious, it's important that they do stay away. I think most of the arguments I see about school are not necessarily that. It's sometimes arguments between people who want massive amounts of caution, perhaps too much caution, and people who want, too little caution. There's a balance, and there are probably better rational ways that we can handle this. It's also, I think, frustrating in that the only thing that seems to close is school. Bars are still open. Restaurants are still open. You can go to football games and basketball games and go to weddings and parties. And the only thing that we seem to keep arguing about is school, as if it's somehow not essential, or if it's less important. And that's massively frustrating to many people, present company included.
Schools should be the last to close.
Among them, I think, I think schools are as essential as many other essential services. But for some reason, we seem to think they're the most expendable, and that's somewhat bad.
But, you don't have to be a public health expert. The argument that I and others have made is this current wave and variant is so gone so viral that it's an infrastructure issue. If there aren't enough bus drivers or teachers, I'm sorry, there's nothing. The building can't open. There's no one there to run it.
That is absolutely true. But that is a short, theoretically a short-term thing, because again, this is burning through pretty fast. Right. So I get that argument. Like, look, if there's not enough people, there's not enough people. But this is when you would hope as a society we could band together and figure this out. It's not like this is unexpected or that we haven't faced this before. But even at this late date, again, I think almost all the arguments I see about whether to open or close something is school. Never anything else. It's just always school. And to shut down school when everything else is open seems backwards.
Okay, so lots more to talk about each one of these, but I want to try to move through. People are like, ask him another follow-up. I hear you, even though we're not live, but I have to ask several questions, many of which were submitted when I told folks on Twitter that I was going to interview the great Aaron Carroll. But this one, I was like, should I ask this publicly? And then I realized, they're asking it at the Atlantic magazine. And so, of course, I can ask this. Should I now at this point just want to get it over with? Should I want to get Omicron today so that My plans don't get ruined tomorrow. I've got some shows coming up. I've got a trip coming up. I want to just get this over with. I understand the idea that if we all get it right now, that's going to be bad on the system. But just personally, I'm going to get it, and I'm going crazy worrying about getting it. I was able to stave it off so far. I got my booster. Can I just have it?
I don't think that, we should treat it totally lightly, that you should just go out and get it. But we don't do this with colds or anything else. It's not like we go, look, the cold's coming. Let's all go get the cold. Because not everybody does get it. Lots of people will not. I mean, even when we see these very scary large numbers, the vast majority of people in the United States right now are not infected. And so why do that? Especially because what if it's something else? What if you wind up getting a different virus or something else that would really impact your vacation or something else as well? I understand people's concerns about you could ruin a short period of time, but it's 5 days of being ruined no matter when you get it.
Right.
But not everybody gets it. One of my kids got it over winter break, even though he's boosted. And we were like, well, the rest of us are going to get it because we were clearly exposed and then the rest of us didn't get it. Now, does that mean I was exposed to Omicron and I might have built up resistance? No, I don't know, but I'm not going to go actively try to get it again now or do anything else. I'm just going to continue to live as safely as I can.
No, I thought a public health expert like you would use the secret formula on his family.
No, shh.
Well, there's so many.
Again, I'm saving that for me, not for the kids.
Well, that's that would be the theory, how it would have to play out if conspiracies were real. It would mean that all these doctors and scientists, you taught me this years ago, that have the remedies, that have the cures, they're hiding them.
Right. It's crazy. Right. I mean, the idea that people would let their loved ones suffer and die from various illnesses, even if they had secret formulas, is crazy. I mean, it would have to be such a massive conspiracy and heartless people. And of course, healthcare workers are getting crushed by this. Nobody wants this to continue to go on.
Long COVID is the question I think I got the most. You didn't make a healthcare triage on that specifically, did you? No.
I can't remember. It's possible that we have. What's the question though exactly?
The question, I don't know. Anything you want. I'm trying to find exactly.
The question I get all the time now is well, if I get Omicron, am I going to get long COVID? Nobody knows. I mean, Omicron's only existed for a couple weeks, or months. It's like the idea that we have long-term data on most of COVID is not great, let alone for Omicron. The best thing we can do is continue to booster, vaccinate, be as safe as we can, try not to get it.
You're making a lot of points, but I mean, the idea is don't go out and do, wild things and put yourself in danger. But at the same time, I have teenage daughters. When I see them when they come home, I don't need to mask up.
No. And we're living in a world where we're moving more towards this being endemic, meaning it's just going to be around.
Right.
But the best thing everybody can do to protect themselves is to booster. Every flu season, I get a vaccine, and then I live my life. I get vaccines against plenty of other diseases, and I live my life. I'm going to get all the vaccines that seem to protect against COVID, and I'm going to still continue to live my life. I will mask up in high-risk situations, as I should. I will do the best I can to be careful. But, for most boosted people, this is much, much, much safer than it was a year or two ago, and it's okay to act like that.
When you see some of these pretty well-known doctors going on shows like Joe Rogan and saying things that they say, do you have a general reaction or assumption about what these healthcare experts, I know Alex Berenson, I think you're familiar with him.
I would put him in health expert, but he's a journalist, but yes.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. He's a journalist that has been, saying all kinds of things about COVID vaccines, anti-vax. Do you? This is just a question for me. Do you see that and take your doctor hat off and just think what are they doing? Do you think? What is Joe Rogan doing? What are they trying? Do they know better? I think some people know better and they're scamming. I don't think that that's everybody. I do think that some people are playing either a large number game or they are just tired or sort of done with all of this, or, they're looking at the risks and benefits and thinking mostly of themselves and saying, I'm low risk and why should I have to suffer?
because, you don't really see many sort of immunocompromised people on TV making these arguments. It's usually healthy people. And healthy people are at lower risk. So I do get concerned sometimes that people are not thinking of the social contract and just how much we all are in this together. But I don't think everyone is knowingly trying to scam people, but I certainly do think that exists.
Also, contrarians on anything seem to get a lot more views. Always.
I mean, it's interesting because I don't know. Yes, and I think that's often, some people like to be iconoclasts, and some people want to sort of stand against common wisdom or the man, or however you want to talk about it, and sort of push back as if they know the secret truth that everybody's trying to hide from you. It's rarely that simple, and it's problematic. But there have been times I've been against guidelines or anything else in the past. I'm absolutely not saying that all guidelines are perfect. Lord knows I've taken issue with the recent spate of CDC guidelines, but that doesn't mean you just throw all common sense out the window and say that we should do nothing or it's impossible to figure out what might be best. So, still common sense and best practices can apply.
Testing. Where are we at with the effectiveness of the tests and the availability of the tests?
Tests are great. It's funny because I feel like my mantra on testing hasn't changed in forever. More is better. And the idea that these have got to be perfect is an issue. I am absolutely baffled. This is where I really am baffled by the Biden administration, because we have been promised, millions of, if hundreds of millions of antigen tests will be available in a couple months, every few months for like more than a year. What are we waiting for? What are they doing? Like every time they're like, oh, I wish I thought of this 3 months ago, when the same people have been screaming about it for a year. The idea that testing is still difficult to find and super expensive when it is maddening and baffling. And I don't understand why the United States can't seem to fix that.
Do you have any thoughts? Is there anything obvious that jumps out at you as to why? I mean, also, you would think, I just kind of generally think that the companies making the tests know how valuable they are. They get paid for them, whether it be the government or the individual.
Yeah, but again, it's like part of this is like, do you have a steady stream or do you have a small stream? And so a lot of these tests are going overseas because other countries overseas are using them in a steady stream. And so that's where the bulk orders get placed. And all of a sudden, when the United States is like, we need 100 million, they're like, we can't make those now. Like, that'll take us a couple months. And then we go, well, in a couple months, the surge will be over. So why would we do that? And so we don't do it. And then we get stuck again. Because when the surge comes around, we're like, we need, and it's a couple months, but we're not thinking ahead. We keep thinking we're out of this, or that it's over, or that, somehow we'll just, I don't know. I don't understand it. But, we are where we are, and we still don't seem to be able to get ahead of this. We always seem to be playing catch up.
That being said, all tests are not equal, right?
No. Well, it depends what you're using the test for. If your goal is to say, like, I really want the best test, which is going to tell me, out of the blue, is do I possibly have this? It's, PCR test is the most likely sensitive. It's going to detect virus in a broad range. On the other hand, if you're saying, like, I just want to know, am I infectious? I'm vaccinated and boosted, and am I still infectious? An antigen test could be better. If you need to know rapidly, if you want to test every day at home, that's only going to be antigen. We can't do enough PCR tests. Like, you got to keep going in to do those. But an antigen test, you could just do at home. So that's what, for repeated, rapid, at-home monitoring, antigen test. If you're saying, like, I want to do test-to-stay strategies at schools, where instead of quarantining a whole class, we just test them every morning, and as long as they're asymptomatic and testing negative to get to stay, that can only be antigen tests, because I need the results now, not tomorrow, or even, God forbid, days later. So speed is antigen, repeated is antigen, best PCR, but you use the right test in the right moment. And unfortunately, we still we have a lot of people in power who are like, no, we have to go with the best test, PCR. Well, that's of limited use in many situations.
Right. you wrote a great piece over at the New York Times about the CDC's new guidelines. I highly recommend people read that. I know you only got like a minute or two left, probably got to jump, but I just wanted to ask you about that with where we're at today. You and I talking on Thursday the 6th, and you tweeted, I've tried very hard to give the CDC the benefit of the doubt, but I'm increasingly frustrated that they don't comprehend how hard it is for organizations who are really trying to do the right thing in the real world to keep up with their guidance. You run a major organization, university's mitigation efforts as a chief medical officer at IU. So I'm sure you're talking about your role there and anybody in similar roles at smaller or larger organizations.
Yeah, I mean, we're in congregate living. We have lots of students. They're clearly doing what they're going to do. But, I understand why they wanted to go from mandatory 10-day isolation to potentially 5-day isolation. But it would seem to me that, we're saying like, well, we think people may not be infectious earlier. Okay, but we could test. Like we could say, okay, fine, you've got COVID. Let's see what you look like on day 3 or 4. And if you look great, we'll antigen test you on day 4, maybe on day 5. And if you're negative, great, go back. But instead, they're just like, nope, everybody on day 5 can go. Well, some people are still going to be infectious on day 5. And that means in lots of situations, they're going to be spreading Omicron. Some people theoretically, I guess, could be better on day 3. I don't know. But we pretend like we still can't do any of this and instead do these one-size-fits-all guidelines for both vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. And that's incredibly hard. Plus, if you read the quarantine guidelines, they're like, well, maybe 5 days, and okay, well, after 5 days, I don't know. Also, if you can't quarantine, just wear a mask. Well, now you've opened an enormous loophole where just people aren't going to quarantine. So I don't understand. I really don't get it. I think that we could have more evidence-based, or at least thoughtful data-based guidelines that recognize that the people who are vaccinated and boosted are living in a different risk category than people who are unvaccinated. And unfortunately, they just don't seem to be able to figure that out.
Young kids, vaccination, under 5, still not approved. When will that happen? And how concerned should parents be about this variant?
Well, again, it's like, everything is, is there risk greater than 0? Yes, but the risk is reasonably low. The risk is mostly to older and at-risk people, so that's great. I hope that they get vaccines soon. I'd like to see everybody vaccinated. Certainly, you see problems in some kids do get very sick. Most of them have other chronic illnesses or risk factors, which make them more likely to have more significant outcomes. But I wouldn't be panicked out of my mind. Again, this is sort of everywhere. And people are getting exposed, but the vast, vast majority of kids who do get exposed do pretty well. You do the best you can.
Thank you very much for all of your answers, your time, your continued efforts. We love you here and greatly appreciate it, sir.
Right back at you.
All right, there he goes, Dr. Aaron Carroll, ladies and gentlemen, at Aaron E. Carroll. It never gets old to fire questions at him. I love him to death. He's literally one of my favorite people on the planet, one of my closest friends, been there for me since we met, and I like to think I have been for him as well. Follow him on Twitter at Aaron E. Carroll. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. It's free right now. Healthcare Triage. Give him the numbers over there. Of course, you can also subscribe if you want on Patreon to support that amazing award-winning YouTube channel. It won awards for journalism, really. Read him at the New York Times and tell your friends about him in his book, Bad Food Bible. I forgot to plug that earlier. So good, so relevant, all of his work. Okay, and now it's time to get to the second half of today's show. Pretty much every Friday, I check in with my good friends, Ophira Eisenberg and Christian Finnegan. They are two of the most respected, established comedians in the business. And the three of us are still set to perform this Friday in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And you can come see us there or the next day. It's still on. Check my social media every day. That could change. Stone Harbor, New Jersey, the next night as well, the 15th and 16th. I think I've got that right. Check the show notes. All right, hope to see you there. But right now, our conversation, wrapping up the week, we talked about Omicron, we talked about January 6th, and so much more. Always a pleasure. And another amazing jingle, this one a collaboration between Pete Coe and Gareth Sever. Here we go.
Christian, Ophira, Finnegan, Christian, Finnegan. However you slice them up, you get a different word. If you say it fast enough, you clearly sound absurd. When you say it louder, it sounds like they're real words. Christian, Ophira, Finnegan, Christian, Finnegan. I don't think you're ready for what you haven't heard from Christian, Ophira, and Pete.
Wow, it's already that time of week again. Christian Finnegan, Ophira Eisenberg. Always look forward to talking to you both. So much to cover and talk with you about this week, as there always is. But specifically, I think we need to talk about the fact that Ophira Eisenberg turned older this week. Christian, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Ophira.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
He turned older. That's a weird way of saying it.
It's awesome. But, you know, to that note, I was struck by a couple people who said that thing to me that shows that you've turned older. They say, isn't it wild? Like all of a sudden, like, where is all the time gone? I was like, I know where all the time went. I know where all of it went. I can tell you about all of it.
Christian texted me on Sunday. Ophira's birthday is today, correct? And I text him back, no idea.
Well,
that's because we're so close.
Yes,
Thanks.
well, it's because I was making a little playlist for Ophira, and I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't crazy that she had said last week that it was her birthday. And so I wanted to be clear that I was sending it, because if it wasn't until like February or something, it'd be really weird to just like.
And I'm late to the game on this, but I didn't realize, Pete, that you have no short or long-term memory.
Yeah, definitely don't have either. I don't. Like, we talked about it at length.
Memory is kept in the hair, you see.
Maybe. I hope that's true. It would give me an excuse, because it's embarrassing. Because, we talked about it at length. So that's why it was like, when Christian reached out to me, I was like, I don't know. Even though, we talked about it like just 2 days prior to that. So sorry.
Okay, so no idea wasn't exactly the response. The response you needed to say was, I am wrong. Often.
Yes.
No, he's like, I thought she said when we chatted on Friday.
It's funny how we're playing out very male and female archetypes right now.
Yes,
whereas
right.
guys are just like, I don't know what their birthday is. Does she have a birthday? I don't know. And she's
all
like,
I know
admit
is that she's
you're wrong.
crazy. All I know is she's crazy.
So how was it? Did you get any?
She mad at me? She mad at me? Do you know why?
She mad?
Did you get anything good?
Well, I was asked to. We weren't going to go out for dinner, so I requested my dinner, which we purchased, and it was oysters, champagne, steak.
Oh, wow! You got that as a takeout?
No, I mean, like, we bought champagne. So I guess champagne was takeout.
Yeah,
oysters. Yeah, we shucked some oysters.
Jumping joke. I dumped a joke on top of your joke.
I love a Panera reference. I love a bread bowl at any time brought into anything.
Okay.
And steak, just bought some steak. Yeah, no, we made it, but because that stuff's easy to make. Well, it's easy to make well.
That's a great birthday meal. And any presents, any discoveries?
My husband gave me he was like, you could take a writer's retreat at some point. Pick your time.
Like like a single vacation, like you can go away whenever you want and do a thing.
Yeah.
Pretty much what you would do anyway, because you don't have to ask his permission for that sort of thing.
True, but not exactly, because I don't have to ask his permission. But it's like the idea that when you have a small child, that your partner will be like, just take some time and don't worry about it.
Right.
Gotcha.
That's
like,
nice.
Huge.
So this is like the husband equivalent of a free hug coupon.
Yeah, maybe I'd dial up that hug, but yeah.
Yeah. All right. That's nice.
Dial it up. So do you have any kind of like routines or traditions or anything? Does it feel, I always like that. We talked about this, I think, last week with New Year's resolutions. I kind of take my birthday as the time to kind of collect my last year and think about looking forward, goals, etc.
So I live solidly in the present because I am both really unreconciled and traumatized by my past, yet totally fearful of my future. So what I did was I wrote something that I don't really do because I'm not very idealistic, is that I just wrote about I wrote a little list of if I I guess could wave a magic wand or cast a spell or just make things happen however I like. What are some things that I would just love to see happen this year for me personally?
Love it.
Yeah, that was it. And some of them are impossible.
Yeah, things that are within your control, or things that are
nope.
Okay,
yeah.
so just
no.
good if fortune were to shine upon you.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It wasn't I go on a walk and find a magical unicorn. I was still within the natural properties of Earth.
Is it true that you hoped for the pandemic to continue through 2040?
Because that's what I got. Because that's what I'm gonna get.
I mean, what are we feeling after this week? I think you tweeted a couple things about it. I feel like Ophira, but this was the week where during a week where we're on the way up and more people are getting cases, and it means so much of our life, we talked a little bit about this last week, are paused. It just really is very challenging. This dark cloud the whole time, it would seem, for most folks.
So I feel like a sitting duck because I haven't got it.
Same.
So
Me too.
So I just feel, and I honestly can't decide. I mean, I made a joke about it on Twitter, but it's do I just look at the calendar and go, this is the day that we should just do a bunch of stuff and just try to get it over with? Because there's some things later in the month that I would really like to be fine for.
Yeah, it doesn't.
I've heard
seem,
worse ideas.
It doesn't seem like the most unreasonable concept. I opened a kissing booth at the mall. And it's been mostly old men that come by, but
very brisk business, though.
Yeah, I just asked all the kids in my kids' grade 1 class to cough into my open mouth. Similar.
You wrote on Twitter, Ophira wrote, I know I'm not the only one staring at my calendar trying to decide when should I get Omicron.
Yeah, that's right. And I spelled it Omnicron.
Yep.
Because I'll tell you why I spelled it Omnicron. Because that's how I thought it was spelled.
Oh.
Honestly, because I'd been saying it like that. And
I think we're all just sort of have a knee-jerk urge to say Omnicron. It just sounds better. Yep. It sounds like a word. It's it sounds like some global corporation.
It does.
Yes.
It does. Tony Stark is fighting it.
That owns Beanie Babies or something. You know what I mean? It owns Pogs or just some completely benign thing, and then it's owned by Omicron International, which also sells rocket ships that kill brown people.
That's right. It's 2 steps back.
They're very evil. It's a very evil company. It does. It sounds like a comic book company that's evil.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder, because so many people's reaction now, hospitalizations are up, but fatalities are not, thank goodness. So I don't mean to make light of it like this, but based on that, I guess, is that I wonder how soon it will be that people who are asymptomatic and test positive, or very mildly symptomatic and test positive, just go, whatever, and conduct their everyday life like we used to. I mean, how many stand-up stories have you heard where they talk about I had the flu and I was on stage. I was doing a run of blah, 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 blah. And I remember I was passed out in between, in between acts or in between shots because we were doing a film where I was sweating, blah, 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 because I had the grossest flu. And we all look at that as this incredible story about how the show must go on. Yeah. And what incredible passion that person had towards their craft. If you heard that about a COVID case, you would be like, are you kidding me?
I mean, we're getting to the point. I mean, I think we've all, or at least a lot of us, have sort of embraced the idea that this is going to become an endemic thing. That it's going to be just this year's COVID surge is going to happen, and I'm not, these therapeutics, the Pfizer pill, and I think the Moderna pill that's about to be, I think once people have a relatively surefire way of treating it once you get it, I think that we're going to have no choice but to kind of move on and start living our lives. I am way more concerned about the psychological aspects right now than I am of the physical aspects of Omicron. I mean, who knows what other variant could come down the pike and maybe change my metric on it. But in terms of this particular wave, I'm way more concerned about just sort of the PTSD and kind of the way people have restructured their lives. And we've talked about this before, so I don't mean to go into it again, but I'm way more concerned about just what people think about going out to live performances than I am about the actual, intensity of Omicron.
Yeah. I also had an ex-boyfriend from a long time ago. To call him a boyfriend is actually giving him too much. He was just an ex-thing I had in the deep past. Reach out to me to say happy birthday. He's in Canada. And
putting out feelers.
I think actually when he reached out to me a couple of years ago, it was very long and how are you? And I was like, what's going on with you? And he was like, yeah, I'm divorced. And I was like, oh, I get it. Just seeing who else is standing.
Yep.
But this one it was a really long thing, and through it, there was a thing where he said, I don't know, we got to follow the money because the vaccines are just one way out of this. And I was like, all right, I will not respond to this conversation.
Follow the money
over.
Where?
Oh God, I don't know. It's like Big Pharma is driving.
I mean, we're giving our money to Big Pharma anyway. People act like Big Pharma. It's like, I got it. We can start making money off these drugs.
That's right. Who do you think? Right.
Yeah, our entire lives are already spent funneling money to Big Pharma. They didn't need Corona to turn a profit.
And last by the way, anybody or any company that comes up with a miracle vaccine for a deadly and contagious virus deserves to get paid. If anybody deserves to get paid, it's that company.
I don't know how I feel about that.
Okay,
I don't know. I mean, the polio vaccine was given away for free. I mean, I guess it's probably silly to assume any sort of humane responsibility on the part of major corporations at this point. But in the past, a lot of medical breakthroughs have been sort of donated to the good of humanity.
Well, the research and development cost hundreds of millions of dollars. Sharing the solution for free with anybody else who can create it, I think would be the equivalent of that.
Yes.
You still need money
for sure.
to the scientists aren't working for free. That they should.
Scientists should work for free. Them and teachers, right? Teachers should also work for free.
Scientists, and I think people who work outside in weather conditions, I think, should also be unpaid.
That deli around the corner that makes really good
comics should get paid. Comics should
obviously
get paid.
And we're still on the books right now for January 16th in Pennsylvania. So,
and not only that, sold more tickets as far as I can tell, because I had people respond that they were excited.
All right, well, let's go. January 16th, King of Prussia.
Wait, 15th and 16th.
That's what I meant. And
15th, King of Prussia. Is the next one happening as well?
I think the 16th is still happening too. I think we'll talk about it, but until we cancel, they're ready to go. So come out to our Omicron.
Can we call our tour until we cancel?
We're literally going to get in our cars and drive to Pennsylvania to then sit in a gas station parking lot and have a soda and talk about how bummed we are that the show was canceled, and then turn around and drive home.
What I've always liked about you, Christian, is the optimism.
Well, it's either that or we're going to go all the way there, do the show, and get sick.
I'll get sick here.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you'd made that choice.
Yeah, are we all going to, by the way, since we're here on air, are we all going to rapid test before we get in the car? What are we going to do, guys?
I have a rapid test.
I can rapid test if you can get your hands on one.
Yeah, man, I got 12.
Oh, I didn't know that you were hoarding them. Wow.
She's got the Connect.
The other,
she's the Stringer Bell of rapid tests.
Seriously, you did make me think though about earlier when you were talking about in the past. Like I remember, I once had a corporate gig. I did it 3 years in a row, and it was so much money. There was no possible way that it was in Vegas, and it was like a 4-day thing. I was hosting this thing for like Verizon, like an event at the CES, anyway, And I was so sick the whole week. Like, I'd go out like 5 times a day and be like, the new phone, whatever I was doing, hosting this thing. And I would go backstage and lie across a bunch of chairs. I was so sick, but I was not going to not do that gig. It was too much money. And the same goes for when I finally got in at the Comedy Cellar. And I was so happy to get in there. If you cancel your spot, it was like they rent, like such a horrible thing to do. And so I wouldn't cancel. And I shat my pants on stage. Because I was so ill. And
really?
Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Usually when you take a dump on the stage, it's metaphorical.
Yeah. Just your closer.
Usually just my act. But this time it was real poopy in my pants.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I was sick, but I was too afraid to cancel. But
you can't do that anymore. You just got to cancel.
I shouldn't have done it then. But I was like, I couldn't say no to the money.
How far into your set were you when this happened?
It was towards the end because I was squeezing the whole time.
You got to hope it was towards the end.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
And I don't mean to be, we don't need to get too far into this nasty.
But you want to.
But I'm just curious, did the audience, notice?
No, it was like, not like, no. I mean, just a little sharding.
Just a little,
They did.
Yeah. They probably did.
They sensed something. But again, it could have been my act. Like the facial expression that they had could have gone both ways. Like I'm not.
Did you feel like your act was better because it had a sense of urgency?
I have had that where you either have to use number 2 or number 1 like really badly, and it has created some good sets because there's just there's an electricity, there's an intensity to. I have to get through this.
Is that what happened, Pete?
No, I don't recall. I really don't. The fact that I'm even mentioning it, much less thinking about it, is traumatizing because I just remember how ridiculous it was. I was so ill, but I was so afraid to cancel on that club because of the way that they treated you, as if they treated you as if you were doing a corporate gig there, like that. It was you were the only one who could do it, and they signed a contract, and it was like there wasn't a line of 1,000 people at the club that night that have been happy to step into your. You're just. It was like I
missed one set there just because I had it on the wrong night in my calendar, and they have not booked me since. Yeah. Like literally one set.
Yeah, but I've heard that a billion times. So anyway, performing ill is a way that I think. Well, some people want it. Right now in my community, they're arguing like the teachers should go to school even if they're sick. I'm like I said on Facebook, I said I thought there was this social contract that generally speaking, if you didn't have to, if you had 6 days. You would stay home if you were contagious, if you were ill. And but that's not necessarily a social contract that everybody has signed. Not that people sign.
It's funny. I usually stay out of this particular argument because I don't have kids. And so I'm speaking from, but it's created a weird schism in my Twitter feed. Like it has divided people in my feed more than I think anything else has since, like, generally speaking, me being a pinko coastal elite, my feed is people pretty much in alignment. But this thing about keeping schools open or not in the last few weeks has really divided a lot of people because a lot of people are like, kids need to go to school. And then there's, I don't know where I fall on it, but like where like you have a first grader, Ophira.
Yeah.
You're pretty much in the stay home camp, or what? Do you have any passionate feelings one way or the other?
I mean, I just basically feel like if my child, we are at a school, there's testing every Monday. Mm-hmm. Like, first of all, they want everyone who is of age to be vaccinated, which we did that. And then there's testing every Monday, and basically they're doing rapid testing, PCR. And if your child gets a positive result, you leave with the child. And if it gets a negative result, it goes to his class. Now, any teacher, I mean, I just feel like, no, everybody who tests positive for now, until we get to some new version of however we are thinking about this, out.
My simple equation has been the kids should most likely go to school as long as there are adults there, to drive the buses. But if there are not enough teachers, it's an infrastructure question. You can't, some schools have been putting all the kids in the theater and just like they do nothing, which is, I understand.
I don't need babysitting.
Right. But you don't. But a lot of parents,
some people do, and there's nothing. You know, I don't want to act like. I think a lot of them are kind of getting thrown under the bus as if they're being like selfish or something. You know, I think that there are a lot of people. You know, if you're a bus driver or you work at a shoe store or something like that, you know, you don't have the option of just being home with your kid all the time.
But I mean, when I say I don't need a babysitter, I don't want them to like be all in a COVID farm just because. People need to take care of these kids. Yeah. Like, I don't think that's a fair trade, but I do think it's an impossible situation. And I just feel everything is always pointing to the lack of infrastructure and the lack of help and the lack of, as I've said before, I even think the like search within kind of philosophy that we all are going through is just because you're no longer allowed to be like, lean on your community. That has just been taken away from you.
To some extent, or your community's fighting with itself. By the way, that reminds me, I've got to do a live read for COVID Farms. Folks, COVID Farms is a locally family-owned farm where our viruses grow at a rapid pace that outpaces...
COVID Farms remembers.
COVID Farms. Yeah, I need a folksy guy. COVID Farms. Here at COVID.
Back when my grandfather founded COVID.
You would believe what our COVID looks like this year.
Can you believe COVID used to only cost a nickel?
Our COVID harvest has been so rich this year. My farmer got more and more Confederate as I went along. I noticed.
Exactly. It's like, I'm not buying.
Much like COVID.
Speaking of the Confederacy.
Increasingly Southern. And
speaking of the Confederacy and COVID, today we're taping on January 6th. I tried to avoid the anniversary like I do 9/11 and other terrible things. I will often, I don't know that it's necessary to really necessarily observe and pay attention. It traumatizes and so on. So I actually went to a park today. I got outside. I didn't really look at the media. I did a ton of interviews. I did a lot of work, but I didn't really pay attention to January 6th related or just the news. How much did you pay attention other than, I saw some of the outrageous things that were being said by Republicans like Lindsey Graham and others who were saying, we're just the left or Democrats are trying to politicize that. Like I saw a few of those. I got triggered and I ran outside. How did you deal with the anniversary of the beginning of the end of America?
I do the bad habit where I wake up and I start looking through my phone. And so much like every other day, I did that. And then I was already struck on Twitter where it was starting. And I was like, no. And then I ended up just reading only a couple things. I distracted myself from my phone today. There was a point where I didn't know where my phone was, I'd just like to say. But I was reading about all the sentencing. So that made me feel better.
You read about the sentencing of the people who'd been caught and arrested, and
that's right.
Yeah. Some people think some of their sentences have not been harsh enough. Other people think some of them are too harsh, and I don't know. I haven't really paid that much attention to who got what and what for, but it's still bizarre to see. I guess bizarre to see people be divided over what happened that day. It seemed pretty obvious.
Puts things into sort of stark relief. Like when you go back and you remember how it felt that night and all the Republicans who were, clearly in, kind of shocked at what was going down and were kind of speaking in very stark terms about McConnell out there saying this is the president's fault. He's responsible for this. It's a dereliction of duty, and all these senators, coming out, and a lot of the progressive side of the Democratic wing was saying, impeach him now. Don't wait. Like right now, make it so that he can't run again in 2024. And a lot of those people, as they always are kind of like patted on the head and act like, oh, like the adults are talking. Let's be realistic here. And we're kind of told to calm down and we needed to take time. And we look at how the last year has gone and think of how different things would have gone if we had put Republican elected officials on the record that week. Week. I don't care, even if he still lost, like just how many, you don't think he would have gotten more votes for impeachment than he did? Like, absolutely he would have. But, and then, of course, the House went into recess So then it gave them all a chance to get their story straight and to sort of agree on a narrative, which is one thing that the Republicans have always been better at than the Democrats. They decide what the talking points are, and they're sort of sent out to everybody, and everybody repeats the same thing. That's why, like when the Tea Party, it constantly happens where they get a few lines that all of a sudden all these senators just completely randomly are saying the exact same 8-word sentence or 14
It's amazing.
words.
It's amazing. I mean, and again, I always go like, how do you end up? Is that just a character, a certain kind of person, or is it just like your pockets are being stuffed with money? Like, I just still and go back to the incentive to be able to do that.
I don't think it's money. I think it's ideology. I think it's power, and I think
they're a more militaristic mindset, and so there's this idea of fall in line, like so
it's the person, it's the character.
Yeah, what are the generals telling us to say? And
it's just,
and also I think is the opposite. I think the Democratic coalition is so just a collection. It's like Republicans are one type of person, Democrats are about 15 types of people.
Yes,
and
yes.
There's you get.
I just think it's crazy. But even if it were true, things went the way that you said, Christian. Had they done it differently, it's like Kevin McCarthy, and who's the House Majority or Minority Leader, the top Republican in the House, and Lindsey Graham and several others basically quit Trump that day. And McCarthy was like, it's squarely his fault, and Lindsey Graham was like, I quit. I'm out. I was up until
this
now.
Is over. He literally said, "This is over."
I'm done. And then the thing that's crazy, and then all Hannity and Ivanka, everybody was begging him to do something. And then a little time passed, and it doesn't matter that they said what they said. You play it for them, and they have a way of getting away. Well, yeah, but wasn't the president? It's crazy how they.
I still feel like they have not been put on the record as much as they should have. I feel like every single House, member or senator that's running in 2024 should be forced to stand there during the debate and watch their own clip of what they said that day and respond to it directly.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure by then they will have memorized something to say, but there should be the split screen of Lindsey Graham saying what he said then, and then his dumb, sweaty face trying to muster a response on the other side. Right,
spin it. Do the spin.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love that, and it would be for us. And then how would the voters respond? Exactly. I do. Yeah. That's where I become super pessimistic. I go, and it would just be the same.
I also think it's
but maybe one person.
It could depress their base a little bit.
Maybe.
And maybe, I hate to say that we're sort of an economy of dunking now, that we're a dunk based economy at this point. But politically, a good dunk on a Republican running for Senate or whatever is possibly something enough to muster up another couple thousand votes of people who might have sat home that day. I mean, you're talking about winning on the margins here.
Yeah,
anything that kind of makes them stay
Reels. Home. Get it on Instagram.
What'd you say?
You got to get it on Instagram Reels.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I think that would make a massive difference. But just the idea that, a year later, how opinions have changed and how they've tried to rewrite and whitewash what happened that day, and to some extent have gotten away with it, is just it's I think to me it's the hardest of, I guess COVID's the most obvious one where we've been divided over something so obviously we have an amazing solution for, and people are not necessarily going for it. But the insurrection day was, we all watched it on TV, and people, from reporters to anybody in that building, is suffering, many from PTSD. And then you actually have Republican congressmen. They're like, what do you mean? I was never worried about anything. Ron Johnson or another guy saying, it's a bunch of tourists. And you're like, wow, they were literally inside the building being attacked, and they're rewriting it. And it seems like we all should have a similar point of view on that. And yet they're doing it. And that therein lies, I feel like, the most depressing thing about it, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everybody overuses Orwell as kind of a touchstone. I mean, people on the left do, people on the right do. People on the left use it to talk about the right. People on the right use it to talk about the left. But, you know, that famous quote, like, do not believe your eyes and ears, you know, and the famous scene where he's getting tortured and he holds out 3 fingers and he, you know, he's like, how many fingers am I holding up? It might not be, whatever. And he's like 2, and they keep torturing him until he says the wrong number on purpose, you know?
Right.
And that's sort of the lesson, is that it's not a question. The truth is what I'm telling you the truth is. And we won't move on until you agree that what I'm saying is the truth.
Did you watch Joe Biden's speech?
I listened to some of it.
Yeah.
Great. It'll be a nice news cycle.
Yeah, it was great. Wish you would have delivered it like every week. And I feel like it's the only thing that should be being talked about is the threat to democracy. Like, he should be out there every day saying, look at what's happening. And especially today. I'm glad he said what he said, but a lot of critics who I agree with are saying a little late.
Yeah. Right. No, again, I keep thinking last time we spoke when we were talking about the Twitter jokes about the CDC, and Pete, you were just talking about, just the dismantling and the disrespect towards all these institutions, all these things that we've looked up to. And I was speaking to a friend, and they were just like, I never thought I would say that I don't feel like there's one American leader out there right now that I could get behind, and whatever. They were just throwing that away as an opinion. But I was just thinking about someone saying that who just came to that realization. Yeah, I guess. Not the person that is questioning all the time, not the critic, not the person that knows tons about politics, just the average person being like, oh yeah, I guess I'll never believe in a leader again.
It's wow. Maybe not at that level, maybe not in the White House. I like to think people can still support their local leaders, much less the leaders of other institutions like the CDC, which has taken such a hit. But it is.
Hey, when are you going to become a local leader, Pete?
I honestly, what's weird for me that I think about a lot is putting a ton of energy and time into a potential campaign for town council, and then them finding something I said on stage.
Yeah, that's occurred to me. Cambry, my wife had asked me like if I'd ever consider running for office. Like, no. I mean, I literally on one of my specials have a 10-minute chunk about how old people shouldn't be allowed to vote. Like, I can't.
I think you get a lot of people voting for you with that.
Yeah, I worry a little bit about that. Plus, you're working on a bit right now about the King of Blowjob Mountain, which doesn't bode well for your future. That comes up, I'm imagining, in your campaign.
Probably.
Oh, Christian Finnegan is the King of Blowjob Mountain.
See, somebody who doesn't know what you're talking about right now is like, what is he possibly referring to?
He tweeted about it this week. Sorry, folks.
I did.
Yeah.
No,
I just don't see these things hurting you. What world are you living in? Get up. It's 2022. You're fine. Old people can't vote. People are going to be like, how do I get this guy in office?
Yeah.
King of Blowjob Mountain. They're like, how do we get his flag on our truck?
We think it. He says it. All right. Well, here, final thing. Either what are we looking forward to next week, or of the three of us, who gets COVID first? And we can joke about it because we're going to be fine. We're boosted, and everybody who's got boosted almost everybody has been, okay.
Yeah.
Sick.
I mean, just one moment, one of my best friends who had stage 3 cancer last year has COVID now.
Oh no.
And obviously, when I found that out, it was like, holy crap. But I just, we were just texting a minute ago, and he's bummed, but he's got flu symptoms, but he says he's not having trouble breathing. And so obviously anecdotal, but, I think other parts of the country may be learning this a little after New York City did, but that this is not as necessarily as severe a sentence as Delta.
Not if you're boosted, not if you're fully vaccinated. It would seem overwhelmingly anecdotally and with the data that we have up until this point. So do we not want to joke about it? Is what you're saying? Who gets it first?
Oh no, I'll joke about it.
Who wins?
Definitely you.
I think you should win something if you get it first too, because you got sick. You're the winner, and you should be given some type of an award.
Cash
cash prize or,
Yeah, should we have a COVID pool?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
But what are the odds? I think that I have a good shot at it only because of my teen daughters are constantly out.
Oh, yeah.
But you live alone in a shed.
Mostly I do, right. So that's why I'm fairly safe in general, but
I'm still out doing a lot of shows and at QED where people are kind of coming in.
Oh,
constantly.
yeah, you're very high
volume. I don't know how I've dodged raindrops until now, but
so the rate right now in Brooklyn is just over 20%. So just the fact that I live in an apartment building, I feel like that raises me. Then I have a small child that is technically going to school until there is a positive result. But every time he comes back, I just get everything of all those, everything of everything.
I think you both have a better chance.
Families.
You both have a better chance because you live in New York City. Simply the
I went and saw Hadestown last night. So
really,
you did?
I did. Yes, I did.
How full was the theater?
90.
80, wow. Was there anybody on your lap?
What?
I mean, where I was seating, but everybody had N95 masks, and I listen, we all have to kind of figure out how to live and what makes sense and what doesn't. And my wife had bought the tickets before Omicron happened. It was a Christmas present.
Yep.
And I'm sorry. I keep talking on this podcast into people about how much trouble live performance industry is in. And I'm going to support it as much as I can. And while these shows are still running, while they're allowed to run, if I can do it safely, I'm going to continue to do that.
Well, I think we have our answer.
So then the answer is me.
So I'm putting no money in. I'm putting zero money in.
Finnegan wins already, but we will see. We will see. And hopefully it's nobody. But, at this point, like Ophira said, schedule it in. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any closing? Any plugs that I don't know about? Anything that we need to mention?
Yeah. My next show is with you guys.
Great.
Yeah.
Great.
King of Prussia.
We'll see you King of Prussia on January 15th, and then the next day in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, hopefully, if all plans out. And as of now, that's the deal. And then we will all be at the Insurrection, the next one, also, because it pays. Good gig.
You get a lot of attention.
But it's just drink tickets, though.
It's all right, guys. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, well, I recorded a whole ending in the shed studio, of course, and something happened. I came inside, it was all snowy outside, so I'm not going back out to record the ending. I just am doing this on the iPhone. Sorry. Thank you to Ophira and Christian. Amazing as always. Thank you to Aaron Carroll. And thank you to you for supporting the show. If you haven't, please sign up for it. Hope you have an awesome weekend. And John Caroll is going to sing us out. I just love you guys so much that I had to make a recording on my iPhone to make sure you weren't confused here at the end. Okay, bye-bye.
Off of your fence, even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense, and you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town, just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down, boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. The place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom, never the seed of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up, stand up, got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up, people got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand